This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. Avoid the Maze today is being brought to you by UPS and USPS. Since 1998, Stamps.com has been an indispensable tool for nearly 1 million businesses, just like mine. Stamps.com brings the services of the U.S. Postal Service and UPS shipping right to your computer. Whether you're an office sending out invoices, a side hustle Etsy shop, or a full blown warehouse shipping orders, stamps.com will make your life easier. All you need is a computer and a standard printer. No special supplies or equipment. Within minutes, you're up and running, printing official postage for any letter, any package, anywhere you want to send it. You'll get exclusive discounts on postage and shipping from USPS and UPS. Once your mail is ready, just schedule a pickup or go drop it off. No traffic, no lines. Cut the confusion out of shipping with stamps.com new rate advisor tool. You can compare shipping notes, rates, timelines to easily find the best option. Save time and money with stamps.com. There's no risk. And with my promo code POD, spells pod, you get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale. No long term commitments or contracts. Just go to stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in POD. That's stamps.com. Promo code POD pod. Stamps.com. Never go to the post office again. Wow. Hey, Preston, I don't know what that means to you, but that's one less stop I have to make every day.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Our post office is not convenient.
Absolutely. But Zoom is convenient, and so are podcasts. And to our listeners today, again, through podmatch.com, I met Preston, and I almost didn't have him on this morning because I had his information on the wrong calendar. And luckily, he called me yesterday and he said, "So are we up for today?" And I said, let me check my calendar. And yes, we are up for today. And I went out to your site. I was looking at some of the podcasts you do. So let's tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what made you decide to start podcasting.
Okay, so I'm Preston Tyree. I also go by Tyree, Ty. And I've had a very eclectic career. I'm 77 years old, trained as an engineer, worked internationally, worked in 26 countries and 6 continents. Gave that up and went into the bicycle world and became an instructor in 1996, and just stayed doing that and working primarily in nonprofits until I resigned my last job September 1. So
Wow.
it's that was a contract work that I was doing for the League of American Bicyclists, training bicycle safety instructors around the country. And it's time for the younger people to take over, Karen. I've trained a lot of them, and so let them go. That's it. So just before the pandemic, I got thinking, I'm getting older, and what are the things that I need to know to make that period better? And so I've always been active in the city and not politics. I've tried to stay way away from politics.
That sounds good.
But legislature and those kind of things. And I said, what can I do? And I'm fairly tech savvy, and I love recorders and catching people's voices and everything. I said, well, this podcast thing, let's give it a shot. So we got started literally just before the pandemic.
Wow.
And February of last year, and it was a ride because we took a hiatus. We sold a house and moved and sold and bought a house and all those kind of things. So we spent 6 months in Airbnbs around the country. And so that made it a little bit harder to podcast. Actually, we did some of them from out there and
Sure.
sitting on the porch looking over the valley in Santa Fe. And once we got back and got settled in our new house, we started doing them regularly, and it's really beginning to take off and show. We're having a great time. It's called Growing Older, and there's a parentheses around the ER, so it's really growing older.
Okay.
And it's aimed at a population who says, okay, I've got X number of years. I may be retired, maybe not. What makes that better and more fulfilling? And let me hear what other people have done.
I love it. You and I, when we had a very short conversation yesterday, I shared with you another podcast we've been doing called The Rant, and it's about age. And when we first started it, the concept was, well, we're going to be talking about those later years. And as we started doing that, I said, are we ever the right age? There are times you're just way too young to do something, or people assume you're too old to do something. And it's like, it's not a fair world because you know what? You may not be too young. You may have that ability to do it. And you may be, 100 years old and still have the ability to go out bike riding and do everything you did when you were 50. So why not? And so I think bringing the voices together like you are is going to be very helpful for all of us, because retirement comes at a different time for everybody. So you mentioned that you're officially retired now, but you really aren't, because you're doing podcasting. You still are riding, I'm assuming.
Every day.
Okay. So when I think of retirement, at least in the context that I grew up, retirement really meant that, you basically were going to sit on the front porch and count the grasshoppers. But you weren't going to get on a bike and ride a bike because that was work. And you were going to let everybody else do the housework and the cooking and whatever. But today, for many of us, that's not even possible.
Yeah, and that's part of it. And if you look at the demographics and you look at the financial aspects, the people who are retiring now, and by the way, the baby boomers are starting to turn 75 this year. Hello.
Yeah.
And the steps, and yesterday we did a podcast with a gentleman who wrote a book called Tapas Life, and he's 68. And he's saying when you retire, don't just sit. Here's some guidelines, here's some things. Really neat book. I recommend it highly. It's on Kindle. And he's got the whole thing. It's very eclectic. Do what you have to do. Don't get so tied in on one thing that when you can't do that any longer, it's a lot you've lost.
Exactly.
And part of this whole thing, Karen, is socialization. Here I am. I've got a new friend in Cleveland. I'm not sure I have any friends in Cleveland right now. So Zoom has changed the world.
Oh, it's been a curse and a blessing. Okay.
Yes.
And as I mentioned to you yesterday, I started meeting all these people through Podmatch, and I've gotten so excited that I've been filling my days with one podcast after another, because it's getting me out of, a little niche I've been in for the last couple months. And it was like, well, if I can meet somebody in Texas and I can meet somebody in Alabama, and then I can meet somebody in Canada. And interestingly enough, different ages, different backgrounds, we're all the same. Mm-hmm. If we can truly get that message out, what a beautiful world we'd be living in. So I love the picture behind you of the bike riders. And um, I have to assume that I'm 71. You said you're 77, correct?
That's
So we
correct.
both grew up in about the same era. When you learned to bike ride and I learned to bike ride, I don't remember there were any rules back then. You just had to learn how to balance, and mom and dad took the safety wheels off, and off you went. So, what made the changes in learning how to ride a bike safely compared to just riding a bike?
Well, that's interesting you talk about training wheels because that's one of the things that I think is the worst invention of all times. Uh, it it does it does all the wrong things. It lets you buy a bike that's too big for the child, um, and it teaches a child to lean the wrong way. So once you take the wheels off, they fall down. Then they don't use the bike, and it's so training wheels are something that I'm sorry ever got invented. When I learned to ride, uh, sometime before you, and this was at the end of World War II, just to get this in context.
Okay.
Um, had a bike on the street, and at the end of the street, the cross street to the right went up very steep hill. To the left went down a very steep hill into a gully. Right. So this was how do you turn when you get there, kind of thing. But it was my dad, you know, behind me, helping me out as I went, but get on the bike and go. And the one thing that he didn't do that we recommend highly now is get a bike that's the right size, get a bike that's light enough, and take the pedals off. Because just what you said earlier, we learn to balance. If you can get balance, you can ride forever. Okay. And so if we take the pedals off, put you on a bike and let you just scoot it around, we've seen people in 20 minutes, they got balance because your body has been balancing. As long as you're walking, you're balancing. Every step you take, you're balancing. So that's the secret, really, to get somebody on a bike at any age, Karen. And we teach people into their 60s who said, I've never been on a bike in my life. Can I learn it? I said, of course you can. Kids can learn it. You can learn it. You've been balancing forever. And so we put people on a bike with no pedals. And the idea of the weight, if you took a regular bike and put a kid on it, that's like you getting on a 200-pound bike. That's not going to work well. So we look for bikes, and they make lots of them out there, and they're called balanced bikes, which makes sense. And we look for bikes that are lightweight. So we get a 40-pound kid on a 6-pound bike. That begins to make some sense. But a 40-pound kid on a 30-pound bike, and it doesn't really make sense. So that's kind of the secret. And as we go up in age, it's the same thing. Put the seat down so the feet are on the ground or touching the ground. Take the pedals off and let people just ride around a parking lot. And it is amazing how fast it works and it's so beautiful to see their face when they get it and they look up at you and like, oh, wow. Exactly. I've got a video riding next to a gentleman, 35 years old, and he's first time in his life he's ever ridden. And he turns to me and says, why did I wait so freaking long? And this look on his face is like, the world is mine. I'm free. And that's what people say. What does the bike mean to you? And Karen, the most common response is freedom. And it's, it outweighs everything. Every now and then somebody will say, oh, blood and scars, but almost always it's freedom. And so that's what we're selling. We're selling the dream of you can go where you want to go, when you want to go. You don't have to depend on your parents, or you don't have to depend on somebody to drive you. I've got an autistic grandson who may or may not get his driver's license someday, but he's free. He's got a bicycle. He can go where he wants to go. And it's that's such a joy.
Absolutely.
To watch that happen. And we just did a program. I worked with the League of American Bicyclists for many years. And that's the national organization, not only for advocacy, but also education. And we just, with the help of AARP, just put out a program for cycling tips, safe tips for older adults. And so,
Interesting.
yeah, I don't care how old you are. Let's get on a bike. And
Absolutely.
if you're concerned about your balance, you're concerned about your strength, that kind of stuff, let's put you on an e-bike possibly. But if you're concerned about balance, we might put you on a trike and an e-trike, and get a little help. No, we don't want it to drive you, because that's a different thing.
Right.
We want it to give you a little help, and they're out there, and they're very nice. Some of them can be pricey, but they're out there.
Well, it's interesting because, like I started out saying, when I was little, we didn't wear helmets, we didn't wear knee pads or anything like that. But probably it's probably almost 20 years ago. We were getting my son a bike. He wasn't sure he wanted one. Most of his friends at that time weren't riding bikes, and he was about 10 years old. And I wanted a bike. And I said, I'm going to get you a bike. Then I'm going to get a bike. And mom and you, we can go riding around. And he really didn't get into it. And so that was my downfall, because I kept waiting for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I started feeling very conspicuous at the time, wearing my bright yellow helmet, which I probably shouldn't have gotten a bright yellow one, but I did. And I had this bright yellow bike. So when I went riding, in my mind, I was this older adult trying to look like a kid. And so after about a year or two, I gave it up. Um, I'm considering it again, because we live right next to the national park with wonderful bike trails. And even in our condo subdivision, everybody is very careful with the bikers. And it's like, I never thought of it as freedom until you said that. And then it's like, you're right. If I get on the bike, my family is here. I'm on my way.
And it's fun. We tell parents, they, have us work with their children, and we say, okay, be careful. I said, what do you mean? I said, at some point, they're going to ride down the sidewalk to the end of the street and turn right and be out of your sight and gone. And they're on their own, and they're going to enjoy it. They're going to love it. It's going to scare you to death.
I'm sure.
And so it's, be prepared for that and work with them and make sure they understand. And, you said there's no rules. Well, yeah, there are. All 50 states say in their transportation code, a person operating a bike, or words of this sort, a person operating a bike have all the rights and duties of the person operating a vehicle.
Interesting.
Okay, so a bike effectively is an automobile or is a car. Does it operate well like one? Heck no. But the cyclist, the operator of a bicycle should follow all the same rules: stop at stoplights, signal turns, all those kind of things. Doesn't apply to kids on bikes on sidewalks, but it certainly does apply once you get out in the street.
Out in the street.
Yeah.
And how can we make drivers of cars and trucks work with the bikers? I mean, again, where I live, it's really not rural. It is suburban, but because of the national park, a lot of people will ride their bikes to the park and then ride through the park, and especially on the weekends.
Oh, sure.
And I hear people complaining all the time, those bikers. And it's like, it may be for a small stretch that you have to be a little more cautious. I mean, it's not miles and miles that, that you're sharing the road. When you're sharing the road with a biker, a walker, why can't we all be polite?
Karen. Pollyanna.
You're right. I know.
But yeah, and we're all people. My wife and I have a small nonprofit. It's called WOW Inc. WAAO. You say, what is that? We are all one.
Love that.
So this is part of the reason we're doing the podcast is to, exactly like you're saying, I don't care whether you're driving a truck, riding a bicycle, walking, or in a wheelchair, in a motorized wheelchair, with a walker. We are all one and we have to take care of each other. There's a very old expression, and you may have heard it, you're in the right age group, called noblesse oblige. It's a
Yes.
French expression, and it means that nobility has an obligation. And the way I read that is that those of us who can, for whatever reason, we lived a privileged life, whatever it is, those of us who can have a responsibility to help those who can't. So noblesse oblige. And if we operate that way, but once we get in the car, and there's a 1936 cartoon with Goofy. Remember Goofy?
Oh, Mickey and Goofy? Certainly do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they put him behind the wheel of a car and he goes insane and he's crazy and he's all this kind of stuff. And, cyclists today, you look at that cartoon, you say, yep, that's pretty much what it is. Somebody gets behind the wheel. And part of it, Karen, I think is this, we're blocked off. We're in a cage, we're sealed in, and it becomes a different world. We're not connected to the world. We're isolated. And you can, just like you said, these damn bikers. Well, what are they holding you up? 2 minutes, 3 minutes? What's that? Exactly. Come on. Yeah. You're going to live 70 years. You know what 2 minutes is in 70 years? Yeah. And if you take that attitude, at some point, you're going to risk their life. Not yours, but you're going to risk their life. There was an incident 2 days ago where a young man, 16 years old, saw a bunch of cyclists riding on the road, a group of cyclists, and he decided to come up beside them in his pickup truck and roll coal. And I don't know if you know that term, but it's set up so it blows black smoke out on them. And he misjudged and he ran into them. And he injured 4 to 6 of them. And, they got him, they stopped him and everything else. But it was just one of those moments where I'm going to do something for me without any regard for those other people's lives, livelihood, whatever. And it's and can change lives. And we've got our podcast, we're starting a special session on grief. And one of the people who's going to talk about grief is a lady who lost her dream. She's this, up and coming triathlete out riding her bike and gets hit by a truck. 2 years later, she's getting back to the point where she can get on her bike, but guess what? She is not going to go out and ride by herself on the road. So she's lost a dream. And that's the discussion we're going to have about, grief comes from a lot of places, but losing a dream, that's a big one.
And when we can make good choices, we have to be aware of those good choices. Mm-hmm. Accidents can happen. Somebody can hit a pothole or, swerve or not be aware because of something that happens. But when an accident is created, it really is not an accident, even though we sometimes label it that way. So the other morning when I was driving to work on Sunday, on the weekends, I'm an IT professional. I sort of switch hats. And like I said, I'm driving down this road and there was going to be a bike-a-thon actually almost in my backyard. So I was passing the bikers and guy behind me, he's just like, he's on his horn and he's trying to go around me. And I'm trying to stay close to the center so he can't go around me. And finally we passed the bikers. We got to a stoplight and this guy just squirted around me and then stopped. And I thought, look, you were in such a hurry. Okay. You got in front of me. Now you're stopping. And he started to get out of his car. And I thought, I'm not going to confront with him. So I just laid on the horn so that everybody behind me was doing the same thing. And he got back in his car. I don't understand that kind of mentality in this world. because I love what you said about that. A biker on the road has all the same rights as I do in my car and in my truck. And that means they can't hog the road and they can't swerve back and forth. They have to maintain all the rules as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are you seeing as far as seniors? And I hate using the word seniors because I don't feel like a senior, but what are you seeing in the age group of 50 on up, getting back on our bikes?
That's part of this discussion that we just had with AARP and put out a whole program with the League of American Bicyclists about older adults. Part of it is community. People want to enjoy, be out together. Sure. in groups. And it's part of it is I'm going to stay active. If I sit, I die. And so I'm going to stay active one way or another. And a lot of things are happening right now, besides the pandemic and Zoom and everything else. Part of it is this discussion about e-bikes. The price of e-bikes is coming down very, very quickly. And so here's a person, let's call them 80 years old. They had gotten to the point where they were sitting a lot. We get them back up on their feet and get them moving around, getting them flexible. And they said, yeah, but I live in an area with hills. It's not a problem. We can go to an e-bike and the price is getting down to where they are reasonable. We will get an e-bike that is e-assist. So it only assists you. You can't just drive it by a throttle like a motorcycle.
Okay.
And you have to turn those pedals. It's not going anywhere till you turn the pedals. Now, when it sees you pressing hard on the pedals, it's going to give you some help. And that's what a lot of them are doing. They are sensing the torque on the pedal and adding in power when that torque starts to go up.
Got it. Okay.
So what it really does for you, people say, well, I don't want to go 27 miles an hour. No, you don't. But what you do want to do is when you're starting up at a stoplight is not creep through the intersection. You want to get through the intersection briskly. And that's exactly what an e-bike does. It's acceleration, not speed. If you think of it that way, it's going to help me get up to speed, whatever my speed is. And then it'll help me maintain. But the idea is I can get going easily. I don't have that big start at the beginning.
Got it.
And it's so that's where the e-bike is becoming so popular. And it's amazing the numbers are being sold in other places, China and Europe and everything. The European model is so much different than the US. If you're a child growing up in Europe, in most places in Europe, you will start bicycle safety training before you go to school. You will have classes in school. You will have a test every so often before they let you out on the street. So what you end up with is a society where every driver had bicycle safety training.
Wonderful. Got it.
That changes the outlook completely. Sure. The crash rate, and by the way, you said accident, I just cringed, my teeth hurt. We try to avoid that word because we can find cause for almost every single one of those crashes. So we tend to say crash, but the crash rate in Europe is 1/10 of that here in the US. And you say, no, that's not just roads and bike lanes and that kind of stuff. No, it's not. It's because every driver had bicycle safety training as a child. And it's not easy to get a license. You have to really work to get a license. And the burden of proof is on you. If there's a crash, the motorist is assumed to be at fault until proven otherwise.
Okay.
So you start with that kind of a culture, and you look at them and you say, oh, well, they're not wearing helmets. They probably don't have to. They're not doing anything risky. They're riding a bike in town, going to work, going to school, going to whatever. It's not risky. Now, Karen, I used to be a helmet Nazi. You're not going to straddle that bike without a helmet. And then I spent some time riding in Amsterdam, and I thought, I'm the only one here with a helmet. What is this? And so we were just talking to people. And the biggest thing is they get in such big bunches that they bump into each other on the street. And that's, And, but they're riding upright. They're sitting on their bike, looking ahead. They're not down, crouched, racing, doing all those kind of things. Is a helmet necessary? A helmet does protect you. It's amazing what it can do if you go down. If you don't go down, and wearing a helmet keeps you from riding, then it turns out, and the statistics are fairly clear, particularly out of Europe, that the benefit of riding far outweighs the risk you take for riding in those conditions without a helmet. So if the helmet is keeping you from riding, it's actually hurting your long-term health.
Interesting.
Okay. Now, that doesn't apply in the US that much because we have a different culture and everything else. And so as League of American Bicyclist instructor, I'm a role model. So I wear a helmet anytime I straddle my two-wheeler. I don't wear a helmet on my three-wheeler. And all of my students will wear helmets. I say, first thing you do, go get a helmet, find one you like and will wear. Don't get a bright yellow one, Karen. And all the helmets on the market protect you the same. You can pay $40, you can pay $250. Same protection.
Okay.
So get a helmet, because when you're learning to ride, getting back into it, you may fall down and you may hit your head, and you can't afford that if you're older.
Absolutely. So talk to me a little bit about the recumbent bike. I see a lot of people riding those here.
Yeah.
Are they easier to ride? Harder to ride?
They're different. You will learn there's a different set of operating instructions.
Okay.
A two-wheel recumbent. I rode one of those for years, and I've ridden from Houston to Austin.
Wow.
On that twice. It's 180 miles, 2 days. The big thing about recumbent, why people go to recumbents, even though their friends laugh at them, is they're more efficient. They're down out of the wind, basically, and you're more streamlined with your feet out in front of you. And I had a two-wheel, what's called a long wheelbase recumbent. So it's very low. My butt was 11 inches off the ground. And when I got on it, it added about 2.5 miles an hour to my average speed. So that's it. Totally different handling. It had the handlebars up in front and that wheel way out there, and it handled differently. All the techniques I had learned on my regular bike didn't work well. Sure. I had to learn a new set of techniques. But wow, what a joy to ride. You're laid back. You don't have that funny little small seat, and it's just cruising. And you talk to people, and you get lots of people talking to you. I have gone to a recumbent tricycle. So now I'm riding two wheels in front, one in the back. And again, laid back, feet up. I can stop and talk to people. Okay.
Yeah.
I can ride no hands, and it just tracks perfectly straight. I can, fix my helmet. I can, put on my, drink coffee. Yeah. And it's, because of the different structure, they don't make that many of them. They're pricey. I think mine fully loaded, and it's got a special transmission on it, so I don't have any gears, and it was right around $3,000. So, but it's a joy, and it may be the last bicycle I ever buy.
Well, and again, I have a stationary recumbent bike because of a knee issue, okay. And I was told, if you do decide to get a bike and go bike, that a recumbent bike will be better for my knee. And I have a friend who has a regular bike, and I've tried it, and I do find there's more of a stretch in the knee than is comfortable. And so I'm assuming that if you meet with somebody like yourself, you can help that individual know what kind of bike they need. I know there are different seats, and get something that fits you rather than just going to, Target and saying, oh, that looks like a really nice bike. And it might be, but if it doesn't fit you, you've just wasted your money.
When I was with the League of American Bicyclists, we did a lot of work with Walmart. Walmart was doing stuff with us. 1 year for Bike to Work Day, they put up displays in over 3,000 stores about cycling, and so they did some really good work with us. But one of the points that I made to them is if you sell a poorly made bike and a kid gets on that and it's their first experience and the bike fails and you can't repair it because the parts are so cheap, they're going to get turned off cycling forever and they will never come back and buy another bike from you. So why don't you make them a little bit better? Just a little bit so that they can be repaired, so they can, that kind of stuff. And it's not going to raise your price in the marketplace that much. And so we had long discussions about that. And so that's part of the discussion is how do you get a bike that will last you and it can be repaired easily? You talked about, how do I get it fit? Fit is critical. When you're talking about you got on the bike and it was a little stretch for your knee. Wait, let's talk about fit. Time out.
Right.
We're going to get the seat has got 3 different movements. Okay. The seat can go up and down. Almost all seats let you go front and back, and almost all seats let you tilt. So you've got 3 different things to get your body where it needs to be. So there's nothing on that knee. And by using the gears, I'm going to put you in a low enough gear that you don't feel it on that knee. You feel like you're floating. Now, you're not going to go really fast.
Sure.
But it is, what do you want? You want to protect your knee or you want to go fast? We'll protect your knee. And that's part of what and I'm going to give a little bit of plug.
Sure.
For the League of American Bicyclists. We have something in the order of 3,000 instructors around the country. They're called League Cycling Instructors, or LCIs. If you go to bikeleague.org, you can put in your zip code and it'll tell you who's in your area.
Interesting.
So this instructor, and they've all been trained on this discussion about fit and all the rest of that. That's probably the best way to, because they can also talk to you about how to ride safely, when to ride, what the rules are, and that kind of stuff. But a good bike shop will have somebody in there who knows how to fit a bike. And they may have paid for some of the high-end bike fitting equipment. And if anything hurts on you after a 10 or 20 mile ride, the bike doesn't fit you. It's not fitted to you properly. Right. And so, because a bike you should be able to go out and ride 10 or 20 miles and not have anything hurt. You say, oh, what, my butt? I'm sorry, the bike didn't fit you right, or you'd be sitting on that seat properly. Is it too long? Is it, are the handlebars too wide? Right. It's just all kind of changes that we can make to get it so you get on the bike and say, oh, joy. This is so much fun.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like the bike we did purchase like 20 years ago, we did go to a reputable bike shop. In fact, I came in and they fitted me for one and they said, well, we want you to go home and think about it. Because I was being very skeptical. It was like, I'm going to spend how much for this? And the guy kept saying to me, I'll even go out with you a couple of times when you ride the bike. Was like, why would you do that? So I really learned back then, I just didn't use it to my advantage. The bike that I tried recently was my friend's. And so it wasn't really for me. But it was just like, if this is what you want to do, get on, see how you feel. And that's when it was like, I think this is something that I really want to get back into. But it means going back to a reputable bike shop, being able to dig into my pocket and say, yes, it's worth it. And then enjoy the ride. But sadly in Cleveland, that time is sort of coming to an end this season. So, it's maybe something that I have to start planning for the spring. So if you had one major comment to make to our listeners about bike safety, what would it be?
Be aware. Someday I'll get into the whole ACE concept. ACE is ability, conditions, and equipment. And that's what I like to talk to people about, that whole thing. But that's a long discussion. That's not one major thing. But it's be aware. Be aware of what's going on around you. That pothole you're talking about out there, I should see that, a pothole, I should see that a quarter of a mile away. And not have to think about it when I get close to it. I've already moved over to get around it or past it. And so I'm paying attention ahead. I'm paying attention to certainly the automobiles around me, the other riders. But it's just don't zone. It's so easy on a bike when you get into it that you just zone. And please don't do that. Just stay aware, be alert for what's going on around you, and enjoy what's around you. When you're out there, and we've got trees, and yes, I'm a tree hugger. We've got trees and nature and butterflies, and it's all it is a bicycle is a tool to get you out into the world and let you be free and do those things. Probably in Ohio, and don't know the numbers, but I'll be willing to bet you that 34% of your population does not have a driver's license.
That could be. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. And that's kids, and it's older people, and it's people who don't want a driver's license. It's people whose license has been taken away. Lots of different reasons, sure. But it's a big number. But those people still have to get somewhere. And so the question is, how do we do it? And that's where the bicycle and the e-bikes and the trikes and everything comes in, is that we can change the transportation system significantly. And when you get in your car, how many miles do you go? Typically it's most of the trips, or 50% of the trips, will be in the 2-mile range. On a bike, it's easy. It's almost easier on a bike to go 2 miles than it is to get in your car and do the whole bit. And it's certainly better on the environment. That first 20 minutes of operation on a car is the worst from a pollution standpoint. So yes, I'm sold on bikes. I believe in bikes, and my life, I put more miles on my trike than I do on my car, and I can do that. I'm retired, and I can make my choices as to where my doctor is, where my dentist is, and I'm pulling them all back in so that I can go to all those people by bike. And so I've got about a comfortable 4-mile range that I'm trying to get everything within that 4-mile range. And I'm not isolated because I'm in a neighborhood and I know everybody. I wave to people. That's the other thing on a bike. You're not locked in your car. You see people, you talk to people, you stop and talk. And it's, for an old guy, I get pretty far out there sometimes.
I think it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, again, age is a number, and the more we take care of ourselves in whatever form that is, the younger we can feel, the more we can enjoy. And for those of you who are listening to today's podcast and say, you know what, biking's not for me, that's okay. But let's be safe on the roads. Those who want to bike, give them their fair share of the road. They're not going to hold you up that much. In fact, the more you try to hassle the bikers, the longer it's going to take to go the few feet that you want to get around them. So thank you, Tyree, for being with us today. We'll have to have you on again. I'm going to go start searching bicycles. Be prepared for the spring, and then tell my husband, guess what I'm doing now. So.
Well, let's keep in touch, Karen. You've got my email now. And Absolutely. As you talk about bikes and you look at bikes and everything else, if you have any questions, I'm here.
I appreciate it. Have a great day. Stay safe. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, Karen. Bye-bye.